You never plan for a medical emergency. You don't wake up thinking, today might change my life forever. It happens on a normal day, on the way to work, in the middle of the night, or during a moment that feels completely ordinary. And in that single moment, before fear even hits, another thought hits harder. Can I afford this? In America, that question has stopped people from calling an ambulance, delayed life-saving care, and turned a health scare into years of financial stress. Because the real danger isn't just getting sick, it's what comes after you survive. It usually doesn't start with panic. It starts with a small moment you don't think much about, a sharp pain you ignore, a fever you assume will pass, a strange tightness in your chest that you blame on stress or lack of sleep. You tell yourself you'll deal with it later, after work, after the weekend, after things calm down. Because in America, getting sick isn't just about your health. It's about timing, money, and fear. And deep down, you already know this. The moment you consider seeing a doctor, another thought hits you even harder than the pain itself. How much is this going to cost me? That question alone stops millions of people from getting help every single year. Not because they don't care about their health, not because they're careless, but because they're afraid of what comes after the hospital visit. An ambulance ride, an air bill, a stack of paperwork that arrives weeks later with numbers that don't feel real. This is the real cost of a medical emergency in America, and it goes far beyond the hospital room. Imagine this, it's late at night. Your phone buzzes. A family member is sick. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's your child. Maybe it's you. Something feels wrong enough that you can't ignore it anymore. You sit there for a second, frozen. Do you call 911? Do you drive yourself? Do you wait it out and hope for the best? In that moment, you're not just making a medical decision, you're making a financial one. And that alone changes everything. Because an ambulance isn't just help. It's a bill that can cost more than a month's rent. Sometimes more than a car payment. Sometimes more than a person has in savings at all. So people hesitate, they bargain with their body. Give it 10 more minutes. Let's see if it gets better. I'll sleep it off. And sometimes that delay makes things worse. But let's say you do go. You walk into the emergency room, scared, tired, and vulnerable. Bright lights, beeping machines, doctors moving fast. You sign forms you barely read because you're focused on surviving. No one tells you the price up front. No one explains what's covered and what isn't. No one says this test will cost you thousands. They just do what they need to do. And in that moment, you're grateful. You trust the system. You assume that later, somehow it'll make sense. It rarely does. Weeks later, when the crisis is over, the real emergency begins. Bills start arriving. Not one bill. Multiple bills. One from the hospital, one from the doctor, one from the lab, one from the radiologist you never met, one from the ambulance company, each with different amounts, different due dates, different phone numbers. You stare at the numbers and feel your stomach drop, even with insurance, especially with insurance. Because this is the part no one explains clearly. Insurance doesn't mean protection. It means negotiation. It means confusion. It means finding out the hard way what out-of-network really means. That doctor who treated you, not covered. That hospital you went to, partially covered. That test they ran, approved, but only after a deductible you haven't met. So now you owe thousands, sometimes tens of thousands. And this isn't money you plan to spend. This money was supposed to go to rent, to groceries, to childcare, to credit cards, to just staying afloat. Instead, it disappears into medical debt. And medical debt is different. It doesn't care how responsible you are. It doesn't care how hard you work. It doesn't care that you didn't choose to get sick. It just shows up. People try to manage it at first. They call billing departments. They wait on hold. They ask for itemized statements. They try to understand charges that sound like another language. They negotiate. They beg. They explain their situation. Sometimes they get a small discount. Sometimes they don't. Eventually, many give up. They put the bill on a credit card. They take out a loan. They start missing payments, and that's when the damage spreads. Credit scores drop, interest rates rise, stress becomes constant. A single medical emergency can follow someone for years. Not because they stayed sick, but because the financial wound never healed. People stop seeing doctors after that. Not because they're healthy, but because they're scared. Scared that another visit will restart the nightmare. Scared that one more test will be the thing that finally breaks them financially. So they live with pain, With symptoms, with anxiety, they avoid checkups. They skip medications. They ration care, and all of this happens quietly. There's no headline, no breaking news alert. Just millions of people making silent trade-offs between health and survival. What makes this even harder is how random it feels. You can do everything right. You can eat well, exercise, have insurance, save money. And one accident, one infection, one unexpected diagnosis can wipe out years of effort. That unpredictability changes how people live. They become cautious, not in a healthy way, but in a fearful one. They hesitate to travel. They avoid physical activities they enjoy. They stay in jobs they hate because they need the insurance. Health becomes tied to employment, and employment becomes a trap. People don't leave bad workplaces because losing insurance feels too dangerous. One gap in coverage feels like playing roulette with their future, so they stay quiet, they stay stuck. And the system keeps moving like this is normal. The real cost of a medical emergency isn't just the bill. It's the way it reshapes choices long after the hospital visit ends. It teaches people that safety is fragile, that one bad moment can undo everything, that security is temporary, and that belief stays with them. It shows up in how they plan, in how they save, in how they dream. Life becomes about avoiding disaster instead of building something better. And here's the hardest part. Most people don't talk about this openly. They feel embarrassed, ashamed, like they failed somehow. Like they should have prepared more, saved more, known better. But how do you prepare for the unpredictable? How do you budget for an emergency you didn't choose? This isn't about personal responsibility. It is about a system where survival comes with a price tag no one can clearly explain until it is too late. And the emotional cost is just as heavy. Fear, stress, sleepless nights, constant worry every time the body feels slightly off. That's the invisible bill people pay long after the financial one. And if this sounds familiar, it's because it happens more often than we realize. Not to strangers, to coworkers, to friends, to families, maybe even to you. And we haven't even touched what happens next. When the debt starts affecting every part of life in ways people never expected. And this is where the story deepens. Because once the bills arrive and the shock wears off, life doesn't pause to let people recover. It keeps moving. Rent is still due. Groceries still need to be bought. Kids still need shoes. Cars still need gas. And now, layered on top of all of that, is a debt that came from simply trying to stay alive. Maybe they'll pay a little each month. Maybe they'll negotiate. Maybe the insurance company will fix a mistake, so they sit on hold during lunch breaks, after work, late at night. They repeat the same story to different representatives. Each time, they relive the fear and the stress, and often, the answers don't help. They're told the charge is correct. They're told it's their responsibility. They're told the policy is the policy. Sometimes the person on the phone sounds sympathetic. Sometimes they sound rushed. Sometimes they sound cold. But the result is usually the same. The bill stays. So people start rearranging their lives around it. They skip vacations. They delay car repairs. They cut back on food quality. They stop going out with friends. Not because they suddenly became irresponsible, but because the margin disappeared. And that's when the quiet isolation begins. Medical debt has a way of making people feel alone, even when millions are going through the same thing. It's not something people casually bring up at dinner. It's not something they post about online, so they carry it silently. Every time the mail arrives, there's a small spike of anxiety. Every unknown phone number feels threatening. Every email notification feels heavy. Even when the emergency is over, the body doesn't fully relax. Stress lingers. Sleep suffers. Mental health takes a hit. Ironically, the thing meant to heal them ends up hurting them in a different way. When medical bills go unpaid, they don't just disappear. They get sent to collections. And collections don't care why the debt exists. They only care that it exists. Credit scores drop. That number, just 3 digits, starts controlling more of life than most people realize. Higher interest rates on loans. Rejected rental applications. Higher insurance premiums. Fewer financial options. All because of a moment where someone got sick or hurt. This is how a medical emergency quietly spreads into every corner of a person's life. It affects where they can live, what car they can buy, whether they qualify for help when they actually need it. And once your credit is damaged, fixing it takes years. Years of careful payments. Years of discipline. Years of stress. That's a long punishment for something no one chooses. What makes this even more exhausting is the unpredictability of it all. Two people can walk into the same hospital with the same problem and walk out with completely different bills. Same symptoms, same tests, same treatment. Different insurance, different networks, different outcomes. So people never feel safe. They never feel certain. They never feel protected. Every health decision feels like a gamble. That uncertainty creates a strange kind of fear, not the loud, obvious kind. The quiet kind that sits in the background of everyday life. It's the fear that makes people ignore pain longer than they should. It's the fear that makes them search symptoms online instead of seeing a doctor. It's the fear that makes them hope problems go away on their own, and sometimes they do. But sometimes they don't, and when they don't, the cost is even higher. There are stories everywhere. People who delayed care until a small issue became a major one. People who avoided the EA till it was too late to avoid surgery. People who survived the illness but were financially wrecked afterward. They survived, but at a price that followed them for years. Families feel this deeply. Parents lie awake at night worrying not just about their child's health, but about what one accident could do to their finances. One broken arm, one asthma attack, one unexpected diagnosis. The fear isn't just, will my child be okay? It's also, how will we survive this? And no parent should have to weigh those questions at the same time. Spouses feel it too. One person gets sick, and suddenly both lives change. One income drops, expenses rise, stress fills the house. Arguments happen. Not because people stop loving each other, but because pressure changes everything. Medical emergencies don't just attack the body. They attack stability. They attack peace. They attack trust in the future. Even people with good insurance aren't immune. High deductibles mean thousands out of pocket before coverage really kicks in. Copays add up. Out-of-network surprises appear without warning. Insurance becomes something people pay for every month, but still fear using, and that fear shapes behavior. People stay in jobs they hate because they can't risk losing coverage. They delay starting businesses. They don't pursue opportunities that require risk. Health insurance becomes a leash instead of a safety net. And over time, this changes how people see their country. They start to feel like safety is conditional, like help comes with hidden consequences, like survival always has a bill attached. That realization is heavy. It creates quiet anger, quiet sadness, quiet resignation. People don't march in the streets over it. They just adjust. They lower expectations. They accept stress as normal. But it shouldn't be normal. The real cost of a medical emergency is the way it teaches people to fear their own bodies. To see illness not just as a health issue, but as a financial threat. And that fear never fully goes away. Even years later, when someone feels a strange pain or symptom, their first instinct isn't relief that help exists. It's calculation. Can I afford to check this out? Is this bad enough? What if it turns into something bigger? Those questions live in the background of everyday life. And that's a heavy thing to carry. We still haven't reached the end of this story because there's another layer people don't expect. How this system quietly changes how people value themselves and their worth. And this next layer is the one that stays with people the longest, even after the debt is paid. Even after the credit slowly recovers, even after the body heals, it changes how people see themselves. When someone can't afford care, or ends up buried in medical bills, it quietly sends a message they never agreed to receive. A message that says their health has a price, and that price might be more than their worth. No one says it out loud, but it sinks in. People start to feel guilty for getting sick. They apologize for being injured. They minimize their pain so others don't worry about the cost. They say things like, it's probably nothing, even when it clearly isn't. They learn to downplay their own suffering. Over time, that does something to a person's sense of value. They stop seeing health as a basic human need and start seeing it as a luxury they have to earn. That mindset spreads quietly. People push through pain at work because they can't afford time off. They show up sick because missing a shift could mean missing rent. They tell themselves they'll rest later, heal later, take care of themselves later. Later becomes a habit. And the body keeps score. Stress builds up. Small problems turn into chronic ones. Mental health suffers. Anxiety becomes normal. Burnout feels permanent. Ironically, the system designed to treat illness ends up creating more of it. And when people do finally break, when they can't push anymore, the cycle repeats. Another emergency. Another bill. Another round of fear. This isn't rare. It's common. It's woven into everyday life in ways most people don't even realize anymore. Think about how casually people say things like, "I hope I don't have to go to the hospital," or "I can't afford to get sick right now." Those aren't jokes. They're survival statements. They reveal how deeply the cost of medical care has shaped behavior and thinking. Even people who've never had a major emergency feel it. They live with the awareness that one wrong moment could change everything. That sense of fragility hangs in the air, and it affects how people plan their lives. They delay having children because of healthcare costs. They avoid moving because they might lose coverage. They stay in unhealthy situations because stability feels safer than freedom. Medical emergencies don't just cost money. They steal options, they narrow the future. And what makes this even harder is the lack of transparency. People rarely know what something will cost until after it happens. There's no clear menu, no upfront agreement. You don't get to say, "That's too expensive. I'll choose the cheaper option," when you're in pain or scared or unconscious. You just trust and hope. Hope that insurance works. Hope that the bill is manageable. Hope that it won't follow you forever. Sometimes it does anyway. And when it does, people internalize the damage. They feel like they failed, like they weren't smart enough or prepared enough. But the truth is, no amount of budgeting can fully protect someone from a system this unpredictable. You can save for emergencies, but how do you save for something that could cost more than your yearly income? How do you plan for something you can't price ahead of time? You can't. And most people know that, even if they don't say it. That knowledge creates a quiet background stress that never really leaves. It shows up in conversations about money, in decisions about careers, and how people define success and security. Health becomes another financial risk to manage instead of a foundation to build on. And that's exhausting. People carry this weight silently because they think everyone else is handling it better. They assume they're the only ones struggling, but they're not. Millions of people are making the same calculations, having the same fears, carrying the same shame. And that silence keeps the problem invisible. When no one talks about it, it feels personal. When people start talking, it becomes clear how systemic it really is. This isn't about blaming doctors or nurses. Most of them want to help. It's about a structure that turns care into a financial maze, where survival depends on paperwork, networks, and fine print. A structure where a moment of vulnerability can become a long-term burden, and yet people still show up. They still work. They still care for their families. They still try to build lives in the middle of all this uncertainty. That resilience is real, but it comes at a cost too. Resilience shouldn't require suffering in silence. The real cost of a medical emergency is that it forces people to become strong in ways they shouldn't have to. It teaches them to expect instability, to accept fear as normal. And that doesn't just affect individuals, it shapes entire communities, entire generations. Children grow up watching their parents stress over bills. They learn early that health is risky, that getting hurt can change everything. That lesson sticks. And unless something changes, it keeps repeating. If you've ever delayed care because of cost, if you've ever felt fear instead of relief when thinking about the hospital, if you've ever struggled with medical bills that didn't make sense, you're not weak. You're responding to a system that makes people choose between health and financial survival, and recognizing that matters. Because when people stop blaming themselves, they start asking better questions. They start sharing stories. They start demanding clarity, fairness, and humanity. And change always starts there. Before we end this, there's one more part of this story that deserves attention. The quiet power of speaking up, and why sharing experiences might matter more than people realize. Most people don't realize how powerful it is to simply talk about this. Not in a dramatic way, not to complain, but to say honestly, this happened to me and it almost broke me. Because the moment someone says that out loud, something shifts. Suddenly the weight feels shared. Suddenly the shame starts to crack. Suddenly, others recognize their own story in it and realize they weren't alone either. That's how silence loses its grip. Medical emergencies feel isolating because they hit at the most vulnerable moments of life. When someone is scared, when they're weak, when they're focused on survival. And the system takes advantage of that silence, not intentionally, but structurally. It counts on people being too exhausted to push back, too overwhelmed to question every line item, too busy recovering to fight a financial maze, so people move on. Or try to, they make payments for years. They adjust expectations. They carry the experience quietly, like a scar no one sees. But scars matter. They remind us of what we went through. They shape how we move forward. And when enough people compare scars, patterns become clear. This isn't about one bad hospital. It isn't about one insurance company. It isn't about one unlucky person. It's about a system that treats health like a transaction instead of a human need. And here's the truth many people don't realize until they read deep into it. The real cost of a medical emergency isn't just what it takes from you financially. It's what it delays. It delays starting a family. It delays buying a home. It delays education. It delays peace of mind. It puts life on hold in ways that don't show up on a bill, but show up in every decision afterward. People talk about getting back to normal after a health crisis. But for many, normal never fully returns. Not because their body didn't heal, but because the financial and emotional aftermath keeps echoing, and yet people still push forward. They rebuild credit. They pay down debt. They find ways to cope. That strength is real, and it deserves respect. But strength shouldn't be the requirement just to access care. A medical emergency should be a moment where people feel supported, not punished. Where the focus stays on healing, not survival math, and until that becomes reality, stories matter. Your story matters. If you've been through a medical emergency and felt the fear, confusion, or financial shock that followed, saying it out loud helps break the illusion that this is rare or acceptable. It helps someone else feel less alone. It helps someone else make sense of their own experience. And it reminds us that this isn't about weakness, it's about structure. If this video resonated with you, or if parts of it felt uncomfortably familiar, share your thoughts in the comments. Even a few words can make a difference to someone reading silently. And if you know someone who's dealing with medical bills or who avoids care out of fear, share this video with them. Sometimes understanding is the first step toward relief. Thanks for staying with me through this.